Hi, welcome to a little demonstration of the Knitloops socks getting started. I have a cuff already. I've got my 16 rows and I'm ready to start making loops. The first thing I'm going to do though is I'm going to weave in this tail because I don't like it anywhere around when I'm knitting. So I'm going to do that real quick. There, like that. That'll probably stretch a little bit. I may trim that a little closer. This yarn is Knit Spin Farm's International Festival of Owls, thick and thin stripes. So it'll be sort of fun to see how the color loops travel over different width stripes. But I am liking how it's showing up so far. I started at the beginning of the white and it gave me 2 and a bit rows, and it's going to travel through grays and browns. I think it's going to look really pretty. So for the size medium Knitloops sock, you need 64 stitches, and you make a color loop every 8 stitches. Well, for all sizes, you make a color loop for every 8 stitches. You start by inserting your needle into the first stitch, grabbing your ruler or a book or whatever you're measuring on. Hold your knitting way at the top, snug, flat against the edge of the ruler or book, and then bring your yarn over or under, it doesn't matter, whichever falls best for you, and measure it tightly. The reason why you want it tight is because then you'll have a more consistent measurement every time you do it. So I'm gonna just pinch that right at the top there. Oh no, I forget, we're doing 1 foot, not 2 foot. Sorry about that. Okay, so you start at the top of the ruler and just hold it nice and snug. Pull the yarn pretty tightly and go to the end, and where I'm pinching, do not let go. Just drop the ruler, bring that pinch right to the back of your work. Use your other hand to trap it. Just hold it so that you can wrap the yarn right where you pinched it and complete the stitch. And then knit 7. Got it. Okay, the next stitch is a color loop. So you insert your needle, hold your yarn right at the top of the ruler, stretch it tightly. See how I was too loose here, so I'm sort of just inch-rogging back up to that tip pinch right at the top, the bottom of the ruler there. Don't lose the pinch, bring it to your knitting, trap it with your other hand, wrap, complete the stitch, and knit 7. Okay, sorry about that interruption. I have some noisy birds. Okay, so you see the back of the work. This color loop is coming out of this stitch. That's the color loop stitch. Then that's 1, 2, I'm going to knit 5 more. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Make another color loop. Make sure you unwind your yarn so that there's no tightness. Holding it at the top, stretching it down, pinching it, dropping it, trapping it, wrapping it, completing the stitch, and 7 more stitches. Oh, I'm sorry, I keep going out of screen. I hope you saw that. I wasn't watching the viewer. Okay, I believe that's 7. Here, we're ready for another color loop. Hold it, stretch it, pinch it, drop it, trap it, wrap it, complete the stitch, knit 7, another color loop. Oh, we're gonna change colors. Yay. I think this is gonna be fun. Okay, at the top of the ruler, where's my strand? Here it is. Now this time it's on the front, sometimes it's on the back. It doesn't matter because you're just going along the length of the ruler, that's it. And then pinch it, trap it, wrap it, complete the stitch, knit 7. Time for a color loop. Pull some slack. You don't need this much for this color loop, but just in case it gets caught, snagging is the issue when you're doing this setup row. So we got a little bit of gold in there. That's going to be fun. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Make a color loop. You can see we're going to have 2 more color loops, looks like. Holding it at the top of the ruler, stretching it down, pinching it, drop the ruler. Hope that's not too loud on the... Okay, here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Make a color loop. Hopefully that was less loud. Okay, trap it with that hand, wrap it, complete the stitch. Now, do we come up to a color loop? Yes. Okay, so this is the fun part. In the pattern, it has you just knitting half the color loop on this round and half on the next. But easier, I think, would be to stop a stitch before the color loop, starts. You see the color loop goes from this stitch to this stitch. Okay, for this stitch, I'm going to knit 1 more stitch. Now for this stitch, I'm going to take this strand of the color loop and I'm going to knit with it. This leaves a little hole. As long as you're consistent, it sort of doesn't matter which method you use. I sort of liked the little hole. So I knit with this one on this stitch, I knit with my main yarn on the center stitch, and then I knit with this one on this stitch, and that leaves a little hole. What you could do to not leave the little hole would be to knit with the strand that's farther away on this stitch. So it would be knitting with that strand on this stitch, your working yarn on the middle stitch, and then this strand on the third stitch, and that's just crossing the color loop. It's just basically taking your color loop and crossing it so that it makes it so that it's a little tighter and there's no little hole. But let me show you the little hole version. So I'm going to knit with the color loop, I just pull a little tight. Doesn't have to be though. On the next round it can be tightened. Then on the next stitch I'm going to use my main yarn, and then on the next stitch I'm going to use this little color loop, and this is considered a color loop row, and the next row I'm going to knit all with the main yarn. So every other row will use color loops. So it's always 3 plus 5. So now I'm going to take my main yarn, I'm going to knit 5, the next stitch I'm going to grab the nearest color loop, knit with it. I gotta take my glasses off. All right, start over. Take the nearest color loop, if that's what you're doing, or the farthest color loop, if that's what you're doing. Then the main yarn, and then the other color loop. And you'll notice I didn't do any rearranging of the loops or stretching them or anything, because this first row is basically establishing a pattern so that it's not slippy or slidey, and you don't want to mess with it really. Just let the color loops be where they are. So I've got my 5 stitches there. I'm ready to do the color loop. I'm going to take the nearest color loop. Then I'm going to take my main yarn, and then I'm going to take the next color loop. And then I'm going to knit. You know what, I'm going to switch to knit with the other hand. Maybe you can see better that way. So 5 stitches. My tension changes a little bit, but that's okay. Okay, so I've got, I can lift up the loop. I'm going to knit with the first one, the main yarn, and then the second one. And you notice I was holding the color loop with my hand in both, and you can just sort of tell which strand is which, and it's pretty obvious for this one because of the slight change in color. Now I'm going to knit my 5 stitches. Whoops. So you can tell this is not hard. As knitting skills go, this is pretty simple. Except for I keep going out of screen, I think. Okay, so first strand, main yarn, second strand, and 5. I'm getting tighter and tighter. I know why. Have to undo that. There we go. Now, first strand. Whoops. Main yarn. Second strand. And if it's the same color, it doesn't make any difference. It still makes a little texture, and it's going to sort of mix and match the colors. But you do maybe have to be a little bit more careful about which strand you're picking up and knitting with. But the fun thing about self-striping is that the stripes don't last forever, so you know that you're going to be changing color eventually. Maybe not on the next row, but the row after. I'm not sure how thick this color is. There we go. Sorry about the outside noise. I may turn the sound off now and just have the instructions be visual or typed, but I'm going to complete the row in exactly the same way. First strand, okay, what I also like to do at this point is I like to mark the beginning of the round because I don't have my yarn tail anymore, right? So here's just in the general area. So I can always refer back to the fact that this is where my first color loop is in the first established location. And for the different sizes, that's also helpful because then you don't lose track of which is which. And then I like to put a color loop on the end, a stitch marker at the end of each color loop. So I'll do that now. Okay, so for this second round, what I'm going to do is I'm going to knit all. And you get used to it, but it's not quite like knitting plain stockinette because these color loops tend to loosen up a little bit. But you get used to just feeling them. And you don't need to tighten them because when you go around the next round and knit with them, they naturally tighten back up. So as you can see, that stitch is quite loose and I could tighten it right now by tugging on it. But when I come around on the next round and I knit with it, that's going to take care of it. So you don't need to be constantly tightening. It'll be quite tight all on its own. So I'm just going to knit all the way around. Whoops, I went a little too far. Went one stitch too far. I might move my stitch marker to be here so I can watch out for the onset of the color loop a little bit better. Okay, so now I'm here and I want to knit with the color loops exactly as they lay. So I don't need to cross them anymore. There's going to be no opportunity for holes at this stage. So you can lift them both up like I'm doing and then cross the first one over the needle and knit with it. Am I splitting it? I don't think so. And then main yarn. And then you've still got it sort of in your hand and you can knit the second color loop. Okay. Because I have that one color loop that is so short, it is time for me to make new color loops. And I'm going to make them midway in between each one of these established sets. Okay, so I'm going to grab my ruler, get some yarn ready, and in the pattern it says knit 4 from the start of your round, but basically we're just placing it halfway in between the two color loops. So it's a plain round, so I'm only doing main color on this round. And that makes it easier to make so I want the color loop to start on this stitch. So I'm going to knit 2 more. And the first loop is going to hang from this stitch, which is perfect. Well, I could equally go 1 more stitch and then I would be doing it the setup the way I did this one. But I'll show you what it's like to do this. So basically, at the end of this color loop, I went 2 plain stitches, and my third one, I started it, and I'm going to create a 1 foot color loop. So I pinch it, drop, trap, wrap, complete the stitch. And then I'm going to knit past these three. 1, 2, 3. I'm going to knit 2 more. 1, 2. Sorry, I'm getting sloppy. Now I'm going to make a color loop on this stitch. So I started the stitch, hold my knitting at the top of the ruler, stretch it down to the ruler, pinch, drop the ruler, trap the yarn, wrap the yarn, complete the stitch, and do the same thing all the way around. I just did the 3 color loop stitches. I'm knitting 2 more. So on every time that you want to make a new segment of color loops, you can just follow the same pattern. Knit the 3 stitches of the cluster, knit 2, then make your color loop. If you're always making your color loop on that center stitch, it's just so easy to remember. So I'm stretching down to the edge of the ruler, pinching, bringing it back up to my knitting, trapping it with my other hand, wrapping, completing the stitch. And so I finished those 3 stitches, 2 more, and then make a color loop. Oops, I need more yarn. And it's at the bottom of the cake, so I have to sort of pull gently. Okay, here we go. Hold the top of the ruler. And it doesn't matter how much knitting you have, you just always hold your needles at the top of the ruler. So I make my right needle the one that's flush against the top of the ruler and let the other one sort of stick up. And then that way, can you see that? That way it's as exact and the same every time as I can possibly make it. But as you saw, that one color loop seemed a lot shorter than the other ones. It looks like it's a lot shorter, but it's probably not more than a stitch or 2 shorter. So in the scheme of things, it all ends up being okay. Oh, why am I doing a color loop? I got confused. I'm still doing the main yarn here. Not done with the creation round. I gotta fix that. There we go. And 1, 2, and make a color loop. Okay, I had to pause right at the most exciting part. I just finished the creation round for the offset color loops, and now I'm at the beginning of the round, and I'm going to start knitting every other stitch as a color loop. So it gets pretty fun. It's a pretty short color loop, as you can see, and you'll see it gets even shorter with, let's see, I need to do right-handed knitting now. I know most people don't call it right-handed and left-handed knitting, but that's how I think of it because that's what it is for me. Okay, so this is very short. I use the stitch marker to lift it and put that second stitch, the second strand, the B strand over that, And you can see there's really only room for one more stitch. So already I know that after my plain round, the next color loop round, I'm going to finish this color loop by knitting the center stitch with this last little bit. Okay, I have one stitch. Now I need the first color loop of this one. And you can see now I'm not moving it over. It's right there. So it is the first color loop there. Now I'm knitting the second color loop with my main color yarn, which is confusing because it's the same color as the color loop. And then now shifted one over is going to be the second strand. So it still goes color loop, main yarn, color loop with, so it goes color loop, main yarn, color loop, main yarn, color loop, main yarn, color loop. It's just every other stitch. So you can't go wrong. Now let's see about this one. A, middle, B, and we'll look at it. I think that's probably enough for 2 stitches. Maybe, maybe not. It might just be a nice relaxed middle stitch again. Okay, main yarn. Now color loop, main yarn, and the second color loop stitch. I just hold them both together and then select the one that I want. Main. Now we have a short color loop. Main. Oh, are we changing color here? No, not. Just a slight variation there. It would be nice if we changed, because then we would have contrast, but there we go. Main, first color loop, main, second color loop. Sorry, my hands are in the way. I'm not sure what I'm showing. So that second one has to reach over a stitch, and that's okay. Color loops don't have to be stitched in line all the time, as you will see from other designs if you go that way. Okay, this one, you see how short this is. This might be the last 2 stitches of this color loop, which is always fun. Main, and then we have just enough to slip that over the needle, make the stitch, and I think that's complete. So you can take that stitch marker out and put it on one of the new loops. Put it on this gray one. So every time you take off a stitch marker, you can just put it right back on to one of the newer ones. Okay, there's my yarn. Sorry, not very coordinated. There we go. Okay, main, new color loop, they seem so long now, but they sure do go quick. Okay, let's see if this one's ready to end. Yeah, this looks like it's a nice 2 stitches and that's the end. Up and over, finish it, and there's no slack, so really that's the end. Take out the stitch marker and put it on this one to the right. Okay. Color loop, middle, color loop, color, color loop, middle, color loop. This has to be the last stitch. Oh, hi Bjorn. You coming to say hi? I'm going to take this one off. You don't have to take them off right away. If you're just want to complete the round and then do them all at the same time, you can. They can stay there. They're not doing any harm. Okay, main yarn. Whoops. Nope, I did too many stitches. I have to go back, and that's no problem. I forgot that I did that stitch already. So this is a color loop stitch. Main. Was I distracted by Bjorn? I don't know. We got a little bit of fiber in there. Pull that out. It's from a farm. And whoops, I split the yarn too. Don't want that. All right. Main. I hope I'm not confusing anyone. Okay, now we get to another color loop. Yay. Color loop, middle, color loop. And that has just enough slack that it makes me think we should do one more center stitch on the row, next row. New color loop. I think I split that stitch. Middle. New color loop. Wait, am I getting off screen all this time? I'm sorry. Let's see for this color loop. Have it twisted. Easy to untwist, holding on to the... Now, let me see if the reverse shows. So there we started our color loop. You can see that dark line right there, the purl bumps, and then you can see it go down in the color loop. You can see the rows of a ridge there, and then it ends, and it ends in a point there, and that's it. So that's the inside of the color loop. And now it's starting to have sort of a plaid effect. You can slightly see the texture in the ones where there's no contrast. If you were using a dramatic gradient, you would definitely be seeing really nice subtle changes there.